So the other day, I was watching some YouTube videos, and Ben had an interesting question on his channel about what happens when he has a dot or an iron shooter in his red dot class. Does he teach them differently? Is that a big deal? And he kind of went through and was talking about that. And I was not unsurprised um, to find that his experiences mirrored mine very, very closely. So I thought it might be worth talking about because where I work, it is not uncommon. In fact, it happens every week where we have classes with mixed shooters. We've got irons and dots in the same class together. How do we handle it? How do we teach it? Do we do anything differently? And so the way our department is structured, everybody buys their own handgun. So up until 2019, we were only irons. We still have a lot of guys on that were cops long before that. And so from 2019 on, pretty much everybody has put a dot on their gun that's come through the academy or lateraled in. They've all come in and put dots on their guns. But we still have probably 40%, maybe a little less, of the department that hasn't transitioned. No, maybe 30%. But it's not uncommon to see folks come in with irons. But what I will say is, by now, all of those that were like real shooters, the ones that practice a lot, they're really into shooting, and even those that kind of fancy themselves to be shooters, even though they're not maybe as good as they think they are, they don't practice quite as much as they wish they did or they think that they do. All those guys have already transitioned. They've gone through the transition course and they put a dot on their gun and they're red dot shooters now. So the ones that are left are the folks that are, they're just really not that into shooting. They don't practice that much. They maybe they're competent with their gun. They can handle it and load it, unload it, fix malfunctions, generally hit what they're aiming at. But shooting's just not really their thing. They don't spend a lot of extra time on it. They don't go to a lot of extra classes, most likely. So when I see an iron-sighted shooter, I kind of already have a general concept of the type of student that I'm dealing with. And that's not bad. It's just facts. Like, okay, I kind of understand what I'm looking at. So like, as an example, it is not out of the realm of possibility to look down the line while we are shooting a drill or an evolution or a qual or whatever, and still see some folks kind of using that old school thumb over thumb lock revolver style on a semi-auto. And like, real good bet, if you see this, you're probably not going to see this. Most of the time, if you see kind of that old school thumb over thumb revolver lock grip, it's going to be iron-sighted shooters. So that kind of gives us a starting point on how we're going to deal with the iron-sighted shooters. Having said that, generally, we treat them the same. Generally, the requests or the instructions are the same. We have the same goals. Everybody's going to be shooting target focused. For a lot of our iron-sighted shooters, if they're coming through an in-service class or if they show up in a performance handgun class of mine, it might be the first time they've ever been asked or even been introduced to the idea of target focus. When they came through, they got taught the thumb over thumb revolver grip, and that was back in the hard front sight focus days. Rear sight's blurry, target's blurry, and that's just how we do things. The sun comes up in the east. Your front sight needs to be in focus. That's the way God decreed it. Obviously, we do things differently now. So we tend to manage our expectations for those shooters because we are a lot of times changing a lot of pieces for them. We might be completely rebuilding their grip. We're most certainly completely changing the way that they interact with the target as far as their vision is concerned. And that's going to mean anytime you upset the apple cart from a foundational aspect, there's going to be a lot of things that happen. You can only onboard so much information at a time, as anybody who's ever been through a class can attest to. But we generally have the same goals. And whenever we be shooting target focused, whether they're on dots, they're on irons, we want them to shoot when they see enough information out of their sights to guarantee hits, no more, no less. Now, while we're training, we do expect misses. We push them. We want them to be shooting at an slightly uncomfortable pace. We want them shooting aggressively. It's another goal. We want them pushing themselves while they're in training. However, the overall goal is to get to a place where, regardless of target difficulty and distance, whatever that looks like, we want them using enough information out of their sights, whether it's a dot or irons, just enough information to guarantee hits given the target difficulty and distance, absolutely no more and no less. Now, what that looks like between a dot and irons might be slightly different depending on the distance, but we kind of get into that and explain it to them when when necessary. For instance, if we're introducing confirmation, by now most of our department has been through some level of confirmation training, depending on how often they come through. Maybe it's gotten a little cobwebs on it, it's a little dusty, so we might have to brush the rust off of it a little bit. But generally, when we explain confirmation or remind them what it is, 10 yards and in, it's more or less the same for dots and irons, more or less. Outside of that, we start giving a little bit of extra information to the irons, where we explain to them, like, hey, you're going to need to see a little bit more, 15, 20 yards. You're really going to need to make sure that you're going to need to take some time to make sure that that front sight is really centered, up and down, like it's even, and it's really centered left to right. Like it's going to have to be pretty close to perfect in order to be getting good hits. And we still encourage them to stay target focused, depending on their vision and how comfortable they are and how many other pieces we've changed. Somewhere in the 20-yard range, some shooters just struggle with the concept of staying target focused at that distance, and they revert to a hard front sight focus. I don't have a huge issue with that. It's not the long-term goal we'd like to get to, but like I mentioned before, if we have already rebuilt their grip today and completely changed the way that they're interacting with the target regarding their vision and how they're using their iron sights, if we then challenge them all the way back to farther distances, at a certain point, it all falls apart if you don't let something give. So sometimes, if necessary, we'll let them give a little bit, 20, 25 yards on the target focus piece, at least in the beginning, with the goal that as you come back, we work on it more. We continue to stretch towards that so that we are striving to be target focused all of the time, any distance, regardless. That's the goal. But, like if somebody comes through my performance handgun class, I would say I have 1 to 2 iron sight shooters in almost every performance handgun class out of a class of like 15 to 16. And generally, I will give them a little bit of extra information, especially when the distances start to get a little further back. But otherwise, same goals, same objectives, same drills. Like they're going to shoot the same stuff. We're going to shoot predictively. We're going to shoot reactively. We're going to shoot distance change-up pieces where I've got one target close, maybe 5 yards, and one target further away at 20 yards. And we're going to come out of the holster aggressively, and it's two on the close target, 2 on the far target, back to the close target for 2 more, back to the far target for 2 more. And it's a vision drill of getting your eyes to the spot, using just enough information out of the sights to get the hits you need, and then immediately getting your vision to the next target. Regardless, irons, dot, doesn't matter. Now, my expectations as far as the time it takes and how aggressively they can start shooting based on their target alignment are going to be a little bit different, especially if they're shooting at 20 yards and it's the first time they've ever been target focused. So I kind of manage the expectations based on the shooter and the system they're running. However, like I mentioned before, a lot of times, not all the time, but most of the time with iron shooters, they're just not the same level and capability as a lot of the really good iron or really good dot shooters. All the really, really good shooters, the guys that like to shoot and practice all the time, they've already transitioned. They're already on the red dots. They're living in the future. So my irons guys, just like any class of any makeup that I've ever taught, your expectations are going to change shooter to shooter. And then I just take the irons piece into account into what I can expect and how hard I can push them. But the objectives, the goals, the way I treat them, the dots, the overall drills that we shoot, none of that changes. We have them run the same thing. And I certainly don't exclude them from anything. It's not unlike having a class with different guns in it. So it is not uncommon where I work to teach a class or maybe an in-service class where we've got some folks on full-size guns, Glock 8 or Glock 17s, Glock 34s, full-size 4.5 or 5-inch Walther PDPs, a Smith M&P, and then standing right next to them, you've got a detective running their Glock 43X, or you've got an undercover guy running his 365 macro, or another detective running their P365 XL. So we've got a mix of micro guns and full-size guns. I don't change the drills. I don't change the goals. I don't change the way that they shoot based on the type of gun they have. We just manage expectations a little bit. That's really all that boils down to. But the same goals are present. I want them to be target focused, regardless whether they got a dot or irons on the full-size gun or the micro gun, doesn't matter. I want them to use just enough information out of the sights to get hits when they need to. And I want them shooting at an aggressive, slightly uncomfortable pace in training so that when they're doing whatever assessment, qual, or the day comes when they need to do this for real, they're able to engage with a level of confidence out of their sights using just enough information to guarantee hits when they need to and be aggressive and accurate as possible. The type of gun they're shooting doesn't matter, just like the type of aiming system they're shooting doesn't really matter. We just change the information a little bit. I might talk about cues slightly differently. Say, with small guns, we talk a lot about connecting to the gun and how important that is, because when the grip is a lot smaller, this available real estate here is a lot smaller. Getting the support hand on there can be a bit more of a trick. So we talk about how important that is and ways to be aware when you don't have enough, or how to maybe try to open up a little bit more space on the grip, things to be aware of. And then ultimately, what are the limitations? At some point, the size of the gun might be a true limitation on how aggressively or how hard you can run that gun. I don't know. Depends on the shooter. We'll find out. So we just kind of take all those things into consideration. We think about them, explain things a little bit differently when necessary, but 90 to 95% of the intent of the instruction, and 100% of the drills, they're all the same. So I thought that might be kind of interesting to look at. I know there's a bunch of departments out that are still on irons. There's plenty that are transitioning, because I get questions all the time about what our red dot transition system or program looks like. So hopefully some of the stuff I talked about today was helpful. If there's got any other questions or other topics I haven't covered and you got questions about them, drop them down below. And the whole nonsense about like, share, subscribe, or ring the bell, or whatever I'm supposed to say. Do it if you want, and if you don't want to, that's cool. We'll still be friends. Take care. Hope that helps.